John Evans was born in Sioux Falls, South Dakota in 1932. And when he was a young boy, his family moved to Redondo Beach, California. When he graduated with an MFA from the Chicago Art Institute, he moved to Avenue B on the Lower East Side, now called East Village, where he lived until 2012. This neighborhood had become a place where artists could live without paying enormous rents. John was always very happy to be what he called a native New Yorker. He never wanted to live anywhere else. I first heard about John Evans when I was in Nepal near the end of a long trip overland from Amsterdam to Kathmandu. A friend who lived in a loft on Houston Street near Avenue B wrote a letter to me in which she mentioned that she had met a neighbor named John Evans that she thought I would like to meet when I came back. And so when I returned, I did meet John, and within about a year I was living with him on Avenue B and 3rd Street. After moving to the East Village, John started doing his daily collages in books. The early collages in the 1960s were minimal with black and white drawings. He would use, like, this is a ticket stub for the Metropolitan Museum. This is a stub from a journey from Paris. It looks like from Paris to Rome. This says Shake Well. This is a pull tab. And then there was the Hare Krishna matchbook. At that time in our neighborhood, there was a movement toward enlightenment. And you would see the Hare Krishnas on the street singing often. In the 1970s on, he added and here's a discarded card. In the 1970s and on, he added vibrant ink and water colors to the backgrounds and many more found objects. In 1985, John was awarded an NEA grant, and we lived for several months in France on the campus of an art school in the hills above Nice. As you can see in this collage, he used a French bottle label. And here's another collage using material from France. We had gone to France on our honeymoon, so we were very happy to spend some more time there. But one day, John muttered to me, "Say la goddamn bee." And I thought, I think it's time for us to go home. And so we did. And John had many articles written about his work in the New York Times, but he chose two to show his work. He was very pleased. There were still push carts on Avenue C when John arrived, and the streets around were filled with people who came from all over the world. There are examples in the collages using it that were discarded by people whose families spoke Italian, Arabic, Spanish, Russian, Hindi, and Chinese. East 6th Street had Indian restaurants almost right next to each other from 1st to 2nd Avenue. So, and this is Avenue B as the place to be, which it was, or is. And here's pictures from the neighborhood. His studio was filled with these elements, but he always seemed to know exactly where to find what would work perfectly in the collage of that day. His books, his diaries could also be more personal with photos of himself and his family. That's a picture of John when he was a baby, along with the Beatles and others. And this is a collage he did on our wedding day. It says "Happily Ever After," which is very true. Oh, and then in 1978, our twin daughters, Honor and India, were born. And John did not seem extremely excited when he found about this coming fatherhood. That he was there with me on the day they were born, and he was so happy. and became a devoted father from that day onward. So we put photographs of honored Indian on. This is Idue Gemelli, which is it was Italian bottle, and the label. Idue Gemelli means twins in Italian. And this one, a friend of his took this photograph, and then he liked it so much he made a rubber stamp out of it. And John loved going to those old photo booths, and here's a picture with the kids. They were having such a good time. I don't know why those have disappeared. This is some newspaper clippings about an old dear friend of ours, Tom Worth. John was active in bringing to court a case against Bellevue Hospital, who refused to acknowledge Tom's living will. And even though the judge in the case ruled against John, he did advise the state legislature to put forward a process where living wills would be valid. And there were other political collages. This one is about a Nick Reagan. And that, I think, was about the Iran-Contra thing, but it has Hitler, who seems to be appearing recently.
Oliver North.
Yep. And this was Clayton Patterson, a friend of John's who was involved with the demonstration at the park. He had taken a videotape of what the police were doing, and when they found out, they ordered him to hand it over. He wouldn't do it, so they arrested him. And here's more about politics and stock films. And this is about the environment. And John also did bottles that were filled with like safety pins and beads, and he would give them to his friends. And many of John's friends who admired his work would give him things for his collages, and he would always write thank you to them on the collage. I think there's some examples of that here. In 2000, he decided to discontinue doing the collages every day, but found he couldn't completely stop. While not daily, he still added his collages to the books, and they continued as an illustration of the times he lived in. In 2002, the New York Historical Society hosted an important exhibit of John's work. This is what the curator of the Historical Society, Valerie Comar, wrote of the exhibit in their catalog, New York Diary, the collages of John Evans. What cannot fail to strike the New Yorker, but anyone who loves New York, is the way these collages celebrate both the city's material abundance and its rich ethnic culture. With wit, warmth, and optimism, John Evans has captured New York's distinctly metropolitan spirit. Each collage is a richly layered world of color and form that evokes in the end a larger world. Now you will hear India talk about her work and showing her work. Her father was so proud of her becoming an artist and following in his footsteps. I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
This is the collage my father made on the day my twin sister and I were born. And I remember him saying often that it was the happiest day of his life. And to be raised by two hippies, one being an artist and one being somebody who really appreciated art and wanted to be surrounded by art, really made me an open person who believed in the motto, be here now, and that's what I heard my father say many times to my mother. If they ever argued on the rare occasions, he would say, oh, let's make love, Margaret, not war. And so my mother worked full-time jobs, and most of them were nonprofit, and one was at the 3rd Street Music School. Water, you pick up? The 3rd Street Music School, where my sister and I were able to get free lessons. I played the saxophone, and my sister guitar and piano. And my father also had some part-time jobs. When we were born, he was actually a taxi cab driver. Then he was a bartender at one point, and then he was a horticultural technician, and that's how he met Maryland's plants, watering plants and taking care of plants. But he always had time to do his artwork and to take care of my sister and I. And I remember him always waking up and doing his daily exercises, standing on his head, and he would cook us breakfast, get us dressed, and then we would go on all the errands with him, like to the post office, to the farmer's market, and just all around the neighborhood with him. And once we went to school, he would pick us up from school and then take us to our dance lessons or the music lessons. And we always had family hugs. Every evening we would have a meal together, and he was the one who bought the food and cooked it for us. If we ever got sick, he used holistic remedies to cure us. I remember him telling us, oh, just lay back on the couch, and he would rub our feet with reflexology, or he had all these different herbs and things to cure us. But we rarely got sick. And we would all take walks around the neighborhood, and he knew everybody. He would stop and talk to everybody. And when he wasn't talking, he was picking things up off the street or ripping them down, everything for his artwork. And our apartment is kind of like Diane's filled with art. Every inch is filled with art. And that was like mostly his work, or he would do barters with his friends. And then later he hung up my work. And where there wasn't artwork, there was books everywhere. And they had lots of parties and lots of visits from other friends who were artists or musicians or poets. So I was just surrounded by all that. They took us to countless galleries and museums growing up, and even to protests for gay rights, for women's rights and the environment. And I just remember every single day him taking this time to do his artwork. And it was almost like a profound meditation. I would just watch him at his desk, and it was just like he was tapping into this deeper realm. And it taught me to be brave in vulnerability, and to, discipline and courage. And it taught me to follow my dreams and not to have no fear, basically. So coming from all this love and culture, really balanced growing up in the East Village, which isn't the trendy and hip place that it is today. Back then, there were lots of drug dealers, heroin junkies, punk rockers, transvestites, squatters. There was street art, there was bombed out buildings, graffiti, break dancers, skateboarders. And I remember we went to the school in the West Village, so we would have to cross Tompkins Square Park to catch the bus. And I remember it was like walking through somebody's living room, because there was always homeless people like either getting dressed or sleeping with their tents and carts. So there was always something to see growing up there. And it really taught my sister and I to be street smart. Another thing that really stood out in my upbringing was being comfortable in my own body, because they taught us, my mother's generation, they would burn their bras. So, being naked was just the norm. And we were taught to celebrate our bodies. And I remember they gave us the book, Our Bodies, Ourselves, early on, and I remember just devouring those images, looking at how magical and wondrous the female body is. And I remember one time in my 20s, I went on a date, and when I came back, my father was like, oh, how was it? And I said, not that great, because the dude was all over me. And he said, so, didn't you want to feel good? So growing up with a father who wasn't strict at all and wasn't, it just made me be okay with owning my feminine and being okay to have pleasure and all that. So then later, when I went to the American University, to Washington, D.C., I studied sculpture, and I did many big sculptures on the female figure. And then I studied 3 semesters abroad in Italy, first in Florence, and then 2 semesters in Umbria. And the reason why I chose to study in Italy is because 68% of all the world's art is in Italy, and then I loved it so much there that I moved there. I came back to graduate in 2000 at AU, and I decided to move to Rome, and I lived in Rome for almost 6 years, because actually all of 40% of Italy's masterworks are in Rome. And I wanted to see these things in person, not just in some art history book or on screen. Because it was like living in Rome was really magical, because just witnessing how antiquity, historical art clashed and complemented the contemporary art was exciting for an artist. And also just coming from the capital of contemporary art and going to the capital of historical art was really inspiring for me. And I guess you just can't get jaded when you walk in front of the Pantheon or the Colosseum, or for an artist it's just amazing to go into one of these little churches, put a coin in the slot, and the lights up and you see these amazing Caravaggios that are just breathtaking. Also in Rome there's a market that goes on for miles. It's called Porta Portese, and I would go there every Sunday, and that's how I came across a vendor who was selling black and white peep show photographs from like the turn of the century, and I asked him how much for this whole shoebox, and he said like €5. So that's when I started making my first collage. This is the first collage I ever made, and I would find different things from Porta Portese. Like this is an ex voto. They use them in churches to pray for different body parts. They have like arms, like feet, they're metal. Arms. And then I also started I would write in journals, like just some my thoughts and poetry, and I started, I dipped thread and needle in glue and then started writing with it. And this is some examples of the writing. This one is called Bathing in the Blue and Smiling Universe. This is actually part of my panties, my underwear, from when I got married. It's called Rocking in the Dream. This is an old glove that I used. And then when I moved back from Italy to here, back to here in New York, I couldn't find an apartment. All my friends were living in Brooklyn or Queens, and I looked at almost like 50 different apartments before I found one on the Upper East Side, which was cheaper. So I started this series of architectural interior spaces for the figures, which I haven't used before. And this is a series I did on the museums, just because they took us to so many museum trips and art shows that after a while my sister covered her eyes and said, "You can't make me look." So this series is called You Can't Make Me Look. It's a Guggenheim, the New Museum. This is the Whitney, and this is MoMA. And then we were vegetarians growing up. So this is a series on animal rights that I did about the endangered animals, and as well as the unnecessary killing and torturing of animals. And this is a piece I did on the environment. It's written in thread here. A Native American proverb: "We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, but we borrow it from our children." And this is another one on it's also a proverb from the Cree tribe: "When all the waters are polluted, when all the air is unsafe to breathe." And then there was a few other ones, and then it says, "Only then will you discover you cannot eat money." So there's a void, there's nothing left. And then I just started doing, this one is called Pachamama. It also has to do with Gaia and Mother Earth and the moon cycles, and just feminine power and vibrations. I was going to a lot of women's circles under the new moon, and I just think that when women get together, it's very powerful. So, and then I started doing, I actually became a doula and recently a yoga teacher. And this is a series I did on life and death, because after an incredible transformative home birth to my son here, Leone, My father passed away unexpectedly of a cardiac arrest, and he was more than my father. He was my best friend. So giving birth and having my favorite person die so close together was both sublime and traumatic. And I did a lot of work. I did a lot of work on life and death. And then this is a series, before he passed away, he took me into his storage space and he said, oh, look at all these paintings, a lot of them are unfinished. Why don't you just take the canvases? There's like 30 or more, and you could just paint over them, do whatever you want. So instead of, when he passed, I was wearing my son and breastfeeding him, and I started painting. This is the first painting I made. I left the structure of my father's and then just filled in some, and it's called, the series is called the Avenue B School of Art. Through this series, the dialogue between us continues. And you could see these are the two that were that are completely finished, and these two are works in progress. I'm working on them simultaneously. These last two. And then this was a show that because when I was living in Italy, I had lots of shows, and the woman that I work with, she's my dealer in Rome. She gave my father and I a father-daughter show, 2014, and this one was an installation I made of butterflies, and the lights, the butterflies come off the canvas and we're all over the room. And when the lights, you can walk in, the lights dim, and there's a breathing sound. And then all the butterflies glow in the dark. So, and just want to say one thing about these. These are the totem series that I made. And they were inspired by my visits to the Pacific Northwest Native American wing at the Metropolitan. And I would go there often just to sketch and just meditate. And I got inspired by these huge wood carvings. But instead of making them on this large scale, I made medium-sized words with material that I'm drawn to by stacking one image or object, and they become interlocked, interconnected, like the totems of the natives. These vary mostly. The themes are life and death, emotions, dreams, sexuality, spirituality, and energy. And I hope to give the viewer a glimpse into the spirit, how spirit and matter interact and connect.